The laughter hit harder than the spit. It dripped slowly down Michael Cole's cheek, warm, humiliating, final. Across the dining table, crystal glasses trembled from the echo of his wife's voice. "You're a failure, Michael, a broke dreamer who mistook luck for brilliance." The room froze. Her mother smirked, her brothers grinned, her father lowered his eyes in quiet shame. A man once worth $70 million now stood like a ghost in his own marriage, mocked inside the mansion his money had built. But he didn't shout. He didn't break. He simply wiped his face, his heart beat calm and dangerous. Because while they saw a ruined man, he saw a stage. While they mocked his fall, he was already planning their collapse. And as her father trembled by the doorway, hiding his uniform under a pressed jacket, Michael's gaze met his, cold, knowing. What happens when the man you spit on owns the ground beneath your feet? When silence becomes strategy and pity turns into punishment? And what if the truth about her father is the first weapon he'll use? The rain came down hard over Dallas that evening, streaking across the windows of a once beautiful home, now heavy with silence. Michael Cole sat alone at the edge of his couch, his phone buzzing with messages from creditors, reporters, and lawyers, each reminder that the empire he built from nothing was crumbling. Just a month ago, Cole Logistics and Construction was valued at over $70 million. Today it was under investigation for tax fraud he didn't commit. He had barely slept in a week. The framed photo of his wife Vanessa and their 3 children smiled down at him from the mantel. Perfect, frozen, false. He'd worked 15 years for them to have everything. The mansion, the cars, the vacations. Now when the accounts froze, so did her affection. He called her name softly. "Vanessa, can we talk?" Her heels clicked across the marble floor like the seconds before an execution. She appeared in the doorway, dressed in a silk robe, scrolling her phone. "About what, Michael? About how you've embarrassed me in front of my friends? Or how the news says my husband's a criminal?" His voice cracked. "It's not true. The audit will clear me. I just need you to trust me for a little while." Vanessa laughed, sharp and cold. "Trust? Michael, trust doesn't pay bills. My mother warned me about marrying men who only look rich." He stared at her, bewildered. "Only look rich? I built everything you have." "Had," she snapped. "You had it. Now, you're just another broke man with excuses." Before he could reply, she stormed upstairs. Within an hour, she was gone, her designer bags packed, the children dragged along to her parents' house. No note, no goodbye, just a text. "I need time away from this mess." 2 days later, Michael swallowed his pride and drove to the Adeyemi residence, a suburban mansion her mother often bragged about. He hoped to fix things, to talk, to plead. He barely stepped inside before the mockery began. Vanessa's mother smirked from the sofa, wineglass in hand. "Ah, the fallen king arrives." Vanessa's father, a quiet man with humble eyes, stood in a corner, saying nothing. And Vanessa, elegant in a red dress, surrounded by siblings and cousins, walked up to him slowly. "Michael," she said, her voice laced with disgust, "you should have stayed in your lane." He tried to speak, but she spat, right in his face. The sound echoed louder than thunder. Her mother gasped, then smiled. "Now that's a woman who knows her worth." Michael didn't flinch. He just stood there, eyes burning, jaw tight, heart breaking in silence. He wiped his face with his handkerchief and said calmly, "Be careful how you treat a man when he's down, Vanessa. You never know who's watching." Then he turned and walked out, past her father, whose trembling hands gripped the doorframe in shame. No one knew that the property consultant they all revered was, in fact, the gateman at Michael's own company. And soon, that truth would tear their world apart. Dallas moved on, but Michael didn't. The world thought he'd vanished. One more fallen CEO swallowed by bad luck and public disgrace. In truth, he'd only gone silent. Silence had always been his sharpest weapon. He rented a modest apartment downtown, the kind of place no one would associate with a man who once owned half the skyline. Every morning he woke before sunrise, brewed black coffee, and read every line of the court filings against him. He didn't curse. He didn't pity himself. He simply studied the pattern, the leaks, the signatures, and found the first crack. The tax fraud trail led to an external consultant his wife had recommended, a smooth-talking financial advisor named Kelvin Moore. Michael recognized the name immediately. Kelvin had attended their wedding, a friend or so he'd thought. When he dug deeper, he found transfers, quiet ones, from company accounts to a personal fund connected to Kelvin's firm. The same period Vanessa had started business trips to Houston. The betrayal was perfect, until you looked too closely. And Michael always looked too closely. He stared at the screen for a long time, breathing slowly, replaying Vanessa's laughter at the family dinner. "You're just another broke man with excuses." Not anymore. He called his lawyer, arranged private investigators, and withdrew what little liquid funds he had left. Over the next 3 months, he began to move like a shadow. New business registrations, anonymous investments, silent buyouts, every deal executed under one name, Gideon Group, his mother's maiden name. By the time his scandal was dismissed in court, Michael had rebuilt the skeleton of a new empire. But he didn't announce it. No interviews, no press. He simply returned to work, quietly buying the companies that once competed with him, including the security firm that employed Vanessa's father. The first time he saw the man again was almost poetic. It was dawn, the gates of a new property he'd just acquired, and there stood Samuel Adeyemi, Vanessa's father, adjusting his cap, clipboard in hand, his posture respectful and weary. "Morning, sir," the old man greeted, unaware of the eyes behind the tinted SUV window. Michael's driver looked back. "Boss, should I?" "No," Michael said softly. "Let him open the gate." The man did, saluting as the convoy rolled through. Michael didn't say a word. Not yet. Later that night, he stared at the photo of Vanessa and Kelvin on social media, posted just hours earlier. She was laughing again, draped over another man's arm, captioned, "Some people lose money, others find love." Michael smiled faintly, not from pain but precision. He whispered to himself, "You haven't even begun to lose yet." Because he wasn't chasing forgiveness. He was building a masterpiece, and every empire begins with silence. Michael always believed numbers told stories. Clean, emotionless stories that never lied. But this time, the numbers cut deeper than words. The investigation reports from his private detective lay across the table like autopsy photos of a marriage. There it was, Vanessa's full betrayal, neatly dated and time-stamped. Hotel receipts in Houston, jewelry purchased on his corporate card, and secret wire transfers to Kelvin Moore. But what froze Michael's breath wasn't the infidelity. It was the paternity test results tucked between the documents. None of the 3 children carried his DNA. He leaned back slowly, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above him. The sound it made was dull, rhythmic, like the tick of a countdown clock. He didn't cry. He couldn't. His heart had already been burned to ash months ago. All that remained was calculation. He whispered to himself, "So every lie had interest, and now I'll collect." He opened a new folder on his laptop, one labeled Restoration Plan. The first page read, 10 steps, no shouting, no chaos, just truth. Step 1 was already in motion, rebuilding his company under Gideon Group. Step 2, exposing Kelvin. Step 3, dismantling Vanessa's illusion of wealth and power. Michael began his moves quietly. He purchased shares of Kelvin's firm through a silent proxy company. Within 2 months, he held controlling interest. Kelvin didn't even know the man who owned his future, now sat behind a quiet desk 5 miles away. Step 4 involved Vanessa's family home. Her mother, Esther, had leveraged the property to maintain her expensive lifestyle. Michael found the mortgage lender, made an anonymous offer, and within days owned the title. But he wasn't done, not yet. He began hosting small investor dinners under Gideon Group, inviting Dallas's elite. It didn't take long for Vanessa to hear whispers of a mysterious new CEO buying up construction contracts, restoring failed empires, and dominating the market. She didn't know that the man behind it all was the same one she'd spat on. Then came the press leak, a subtle, deliberate rumor planted by Michael's media contact. Insiders claim former coal logistics tycoon has cleared his name and may be returning stronger under a new entity. The internet buzzed. Vanessa's phone lit up. She laughed it off, calling it nonsense, but unease crept into her smile. Meanwhile, her father Samuel grew quieter at home. He'd recognized something the night Michael's SUV rolled past him at the gate. The calm of a man who hadn't been defeated, only delayed. At church, Samuel avoided Vanessa's gaze. She thought it was guilt. It wasn't. It was fear. By the time Vanessa realized the ground beneath her was shifting, Michael had already pulled the foundation from under her feet. Quietly, perfectly, like an architect demolishing his own building just to rebuild it higher. And when he finally looked at his revenge board, 9 steps remained. He smiled faintly. "We're just getting started." The city buzzed that Friday night with champagne lights and soft jazz drifting from the rooftop bar of the Prescott Tower, Dallas's favorite playground for the powerful. Kelvin Moore stood at the center of it, slick smile, expensive suit, and Vanessa on his arm. They were celebrating the firm's new investor, the anonymous buyer who had rescued Kelvin's company from collapse. Vanessa glowed with renewed arrogance. "You see, babe," she whispered, brushing his tie. "This is what success looks like. Not struggling in court like Michael did." Kelvin grinned, unaware of the invisible hands tightening around his neck. "Trust me, Vanessa. With our new investor, we're untouchable." Across town in a quiet office overlooking the skyline, Michael watched the same party through a live feed. His private investigator had placed micro cameras the night before. He sipped coffee, calm and detached, as the first domino fell. At exactly 9:15 p.m., Kelvin raised a toast. "To redemption, and to the mystery man who believed in me when everyone else doubted." The bar erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled notes. But then a large digital screen flickered overhead. The firm's promotional display, programmed to showcase the company's investors and board members. The system glitched. A new name appeared in white letters against a black background. Gideon Group Holdings, 62% majority stake owned by Michael Cole. The room went dead silent. Kelvin's hand froze midair. Vanessa's smile cracked like glass. A reporter gasped. "Wait, Michael Cole? The same man who owned Cole Logistics?" Before Kelvin could respond, a notification buzzed on his phone. His corporate access locked, his email revoked. Within seconds, the entire building security system recognized the name Gideon Group as the new controlling entity. Vanessa grabbed his arm. "What's happening?" Kelvin swallowed hard. I don't know. It can't be him. He's done." But across town, Michael leaned back in his chair and whispered, "No, Kelvin, I'm just beginning." Within hours, Dallas business tabloids ran the story. Disgraced CEO Michael Cole returns, acquires more financial and silent takeover. The next morning, Vanessa's phone exploded with messages. Her mother called screaming, "Tell me this isn't true. Did that man just buy your boyfriend's company?" Vanessa didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on her screen, scrolling through Michael's new profile photo on the Gideon Group website. Him in a dark suit, the same calm smile she once mocked. Her father said nothing during breakfast. He simply stared at his coffee and whispered, "Some debts don't get paid in money." By noon, Kelvin's board members ousted him, freezing his shares and assets. He tried calling Vanessa, but she ignored him. She was too busy dialing Michael's number. Over and over. He never answered. Instead, his assistant sent a text that burned like acid. "Mr. Cole is unavailable, but he asked me to tell you he appreciates your performance at dinner." That night, for the first time since their split, Vanessa didn't sleep. She finally understood. Michael wasn't rebuilding. He was hunting. Vanessa sat by the window of her parents' mansion, sipping champagne as her mother bragged on a phone call. "Yes, we're doing fine. Vanessa's with someone better now. That Michael man was all noise, no fortune." Her father, Samuel, sat quietly by the doorway, polishing his shoes. He'd been unusually quiet since the day Michael's new empire appeared on the news. He recognized something in Michael's eyes that night, a patience that scared him. Outside, a black SUV idled at the corner, tinted windows glinting under the afternoon sun. Inside, Michael watched the house he'd once helped finance. His assistant, Clara, flipped through a document on her tablet. "Transfer confirmed. The Adeyemi property is now legally owned by Gideon Group Holdings." Michael's lips barely moved. Good. Deliver the eviction notice in 3 days. Not today. Let them enjoy the weekend. Clara nodded, hesitating. Sir, you could sell it back quietly. Make a profit. No, Michael said flatly. This isn't about profit. It's about memory. 3 days later, the Adeyemi family received a formal notice stamped with the Gideon Group seal. Esther read it out loud, her voice trembling. Notice of ownership transfer. Gideon Group Holdings now assumes full rights over the property. All occupants are to vacate within 30 days. What nonsense is this? She snapped, turning to Vanessa. Call Kelvin. Tell him to fix this. Vanessa dialed, but Kelvin's number was disconnected. She tried again. Voicemail. Her stomach tightened. He wouldn't ignore me, she muttered. He knows better. Samuel stood silently in the corner, eyes wet. He finally spoke. That man doesn't play with words. Vanessa frowned. What man? Samuel's voice broke. Michael Cole. The room fell still. Esther laughed bitterly. Impossible. That poor fool. He can't even afford his own reputation. But the following morning, as the family's lawyer arrived with documents, the truth hit them like thunder. Every legal paper traced back to Gideon Group, the company now controlling half of Dallas construction, chaired by none other than Michael Cole. Vanessa's knees went weak. Oh my God, he bought our house? Samuel sighed, staring at the floor. He didn't buy it, Vanessa. He reclaimed it. A week later, moving trucks arrived. Neighbors whispered as the Adeyemi family packed up their possessions, their pride stripped to bone. As they left, a new security team stood by the gate, uniformed, professional, and silent. The driver of a waiting black car rolled down his window just as Vanessa stepped into the sunlight. Her heart froze. Michael's calm face stared back, unreadable. He didn't speak, didn't smirk. He simply said to his driver, Please open the gate for Mr. Adeyemi. Vanessa turned and saw her father in a security uniform, cap in hand, opening the gate for the man she spat on. Her mother gasped. Her brothers went pale. But Michael just smiled faintly and said, Good afternoon, sir. Samuel bowed his head in shame, and that was when Vanessa realized the revenge had only begun. The ballroom shimmered under golden light, crystal chandeliers raining diamonds across tuxedos and silk gowns. Dallas's elite gathered that night for what the invitation called a charity evening for the unsung. The host was anonymous, but the whispers were electric. Some said it was a reclusive oil baron, others thought it was a returning mogul. Vanessa arrived on Kelvin's arm, smiling through the flash of cameras. She'd convinced herself she was untouchable again. New designer dress, new lover, new start. We'll meet the investor tonight, Kelvin whispered, straightening his tie. He's the key to saving what's left of the company. They entered the grand hall, unaware every step was choreographed. Strings played softly as waiters moved with precision. A massive digital screen behind the stage flickered with images of children from shelters, hospitals, and rehabilitation homes, the supposed beneficiaries of the evening. At exactly 8 p.m., the host was announced. Ladies and gentlemen, the MC boomed, please welcome the man behind tonight's generosity, Mr. Wester, Michael Cole of Gideon Group Holdings. The hall froze. Forks dropped. Vanessa's heart stopped. Kelvin's grip on her hand loosened until her fingers slipped free. Michael emerged from the shadows in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, every step quiet, controlled. The same man Vanessa had humiliated now stood above the same crowd that once mocked him. Cameras exploded in flashes. He approached the microphone slowly, scanning the crowd until his eyes met hers. Good evening, he said, voice calm and deep. Tonight, we celebrate those who were forgotten, the ones who were mocked for falling, but stood back up quietly. His words weren't loud, but they cut through the hall like a blade. He continued, his tone soft but deliberate. In this city, we often confuse money with worth, but sometimes when wealth vanishes, we see who's truly poor. The audience murmured. Vanessa's mother shifted uneasily. Samuel stood near the catering staff, trying not to meet anyone's gaze. Michael paused, then smiled faintly. Before we begin tonight's auction, I'd like to introduce 2 guests of honor, people who taught me a valuable lesson about masks and motives. A spotlight turned toward Vanessa and Kelvin. The crowd turned with it. Ms. Vanessa Cole and Mr. Kelvin Moore, Michael said, his tone gracious but razor sharp. Please, everyone, a round of applause for the faces of perseverance. A few hesitant claps echoed. Vanessa's throat tightened. Kelvin looked like he might faint. Michael raised a glass. They reminded me that betrayal is simply faith misplaced, and that sometimes falling isn't failure. It's rebirth. Then he toasted calmly. To rebirth. Cameras flashed again, capturing Vanessa's pale face beside Michael's unbothered smile. She whispered to Kelvin, "We have to leave." But when she turned toward the exit, two security men, Michael's, blocked the door politely. The host requested all guests to stay till the end, ma'am. By the time the event ended, the entire city knew Michael Cole wasn't a fallen man. He was the ghost who returned to haunt his betrayers. And that night, Vanessa realized, ghosts don't knock when they enter. They own the house. The courtroom was colder than usual that morning, air thick with murmurs and curiosity. Journalists filled the benches, waiting for another public twist in the saga of Dallas's most talked-about couple. Michael walked in wearing a dark navy suit, calm and composed, while Vanessa sat across the aisle. Draped in arrogance and fear, her lawyer whispering strategies she barely heard. For weeks, she'd been ignoring the quiet letters from Michael's attorneys, assuming they were about property settlements. But when she was summoned for paternity verification, she laughed it off. He's desperate, she told her mother. He's just trying to humiliate me. Now, under the courtroom's harsh fluorescent light, her laughter died. Michael's lawyer, a stoic man named Richard Fallon, stood. Your Honor, we're submitting Exhibit C, 3 independent paternity test reports conducted by government-approved labs. The clerk distributed the files. Each bore the same conclusion. Probability of paternity, 0.0%. A ripple moved through the courtroom. Vanessa's breath caught. She blinked at the pages, her manicured fingers trembling as she turned each one. This is fake! It's fake, Michael! She shouted. Michael didn't look at her. He simply adjusted his cufflink and said quietly, No, Vanessa, it's the first honest thing in our marriage. The judge raised a brow. Mr. Cole, what's your motion? Motion to dissolve the marriage, Your Honor, Richard replied, and to remove the plaintiff's name from all dependent records. There are no biological ties. Gasps filled the room. Vanessa tried to stand, but her legs failed her. Michael, please. We can fix this. He finally turned toward her, eyes cold but calm. You spat on me in front of your family. You called me a failure. But it turns out the only thing I failed at was recognizing the woman I married. She sobbed openly, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Her lawyer whispered frantically, Don't speak, Vanessa. But it was too late. Those children love you, she cried. You raised them. Michael's voice barely rose above a whisper. And that's why I'll keep providing for them, but not for you. The judge granted the motion within minutes. By the time Vanessa stumbled out of the courtroom, reporters surrounded her. Cameras flashed, microphones pressed forward. Mrs. Cole, is it true none of the children belong to your husband? She covered her face, crying, No comment. Across the street, Michael watched from his car window, his reflection faint against the glass. His driver asked, Sir, was that necessary? Michael smiled faintly. Revenge isn't loud, Samuel. It's precise. Samuel looked confused. Samuel, sir? Michael turned, meeting his father-in-law's startled eyes in the rearview mirror. That's your name, isn't it? The older man froze, his uniform collar tightening around his throat. Michael's tone softened, almost kind. Drive, please. We still have much to do. Outside, the courthouse buzzed with gossip. Inside the car, silence hummed like thunder waiting to break. Because this was only the 7th strike. 3 more would finish the war. The morning Dallas Sun headline hit like a wrecking ball. Ex-CEO Michael Cole's ex-wife caught in corporate fraud and infidelity scandal. By noon, every local news channel had replayed the same images. Vanessa stumbling out of the courthouse, mascara smeared, reporters shouting questions about the DNA tests. The same woman who once mocked Michael's failure was now trending for all the wrong reasons. Inside the marble foyer of her mother's penthouse, Vanessa screamed as she threw the newspaper across the floor. "He did this! He's behind everything!" Esther paced, clutching her pearls. "We can fix this, baby. We've faced rumors before." "Rumors?" Vanessa hissed. "This isn't a rumor. It's humiliation. He's stripping us bare." At that moment, the doorbell rang. Esther opened it to find two men in suits holding thick envelopes. "Eviction notice," one of them said coolly, "effective immediately." Esther blinked. "Excuse me, this property is—" The man cut her off. "Owned by Gideon Group Holdings, ma'am." The name hung in the air like a ghost neither woman wanted to see again. Vanessa fell into the couch, clutching her head. "He bought this too?" Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She opened it, hands shaking. "Vanessa, you once told me success is the best revenge. I agree. MC." Attached was a photo of Michael standing beside the mayor, shaking hands at a press event announcing Gideon Group's new downtown skyscraper. Her scream cracked the air. That afternoon, her car was repossessed. By evening, every joint account she once shared with Michael had been frozen under divorce proceedings. Her corporate cards were deactivated. Jewelry she thought she owned turned out to be leased under company expense policies. Legally reclaimed. By midnight, Vanessa and her mother sat in silence in the now empty penthouse. The lights were off. The servants were gone. Esther finally broke the silence. "I told you to stay with him until things blew over," Vanessa snapped. "You told me to marry up. You told me love doesn't matter." Her mother's eyes flashed. "And I was right. You had everything. You could have kept him fooled, but you wanted to humiliate him. You wanted to show off." Vanessa laughed bitterly through tears. "And now he's showing me off. On every damn screen in this city." Down on the street, a black car idled. Inside, Michael watched through tinted glass. His assistant spoke softly. "Everything has been repossessed, sir. Even her jewelry collection." Michael nodded. "Good. Send the last transfer to the women's shelter. The one her mother used to mock on TV?" "Yes," he said quietly. "Name it the Esther Hope Foundation. Make sure the press covers it." His assistant smiled faintly. "That's brutal, sir." Michael's expression stayed calm. "No, it's justice wrapped in irony." As he drove away, Vanessa stood by the window of her darkened penthouse, watching the city glow beneath her, each light a reminder of the man she thought she'd destroyed. But Michael wasn't her past anymore. He was her consequence. The mansion on Cedar Hill Avenue gleamed under the morning sun, a glass fortress of quiet power. News reporters had started calling it the Phoenix House, the symbol of Michael Cole's legendary comeback. But to one broken woman standing outside its gates, it was a monument to her shame. Vanessa hadn't slept for 2 nights. Her designer clothes hung loose, her face pale beneath oversized sunglasses. She'd come to beg, to say something, anything that might soften the blow she had unleashed on herself. As she approached the massive iron gates, the uniformed gateman turned toward her. Her world stopped. "Dad?" Samuel's cap cast a shadow over his face, but his voice trembled. "Vanessa!" She froze. The humiliation hit harder than any words could. Her father, the man she once paraded as a wealthy consultant, was wearing a gatekeeper's uniform embroidered with the logo Gideon Group Holdings, her ex-husband's empire. Tears welled in her eyes. "What are you doing here? Why are you dressed like that?" He lowered his gaze, shame heavy in his voice. "Working, Vanessa. Like I always have. I was Michael's gateman, before you ever married him." Her knees weakened. "You... what?" "I didn't tell you," he said quietly. "Your mother was ashamed. You wanted status, so we let you believe the lie. But he knew. Michael always knew." Vanessa's heart crashed against her ribs. "He knew, and still married me?" Samuel nodded slowly. "He respected me, treated me like a man. You were the one who spat on him." "Child?" She turned toward the mansion, her voice trembling. "Please, let me in. I have to talk to him." Samuel looked torn, his hand hovering near the gate switch. "I don't think he wants to see you, Vanessa. Not after—" The gates buzzed open. Vanessa looked up to see a black SUV rolling down the driveway. The car stopped, and Michael stepped out, sharp in a charcoal suit. His composure hadn't changed. Still calm, still unreadable. She ran to him before the security guards could stop her. "Michael, please! I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." He looked at her for a long, silent moment, then glanced toward Samuel. "Mr. Adeyemi, thank you. You can take a break now." Samuel hesitated. "Yes, sir." He stepped aside, eyes heavy with regret. Michael's gaze returned to Vanessa. "You came all the way here for forgiveness?" Her voice cracked. "For a chance. To explain." He shook his head slowly. "You explained yourself the day you spat on me. You showed me exactly who you were." She reached out, desperate. "I've lost everything, Michael." His tone stayed calm. "Then maybe now you understand the value of something real. But I'm not your lesson to learn. I'm your memory to live with." Vanessa collapsed to her knees as he walked past her toward the waiting car. She looked up, tears streaking her cheeks. "Michael, please." He stopped once more, his voice steady. "I built an empire from nothing, Vanessa. You built a mask from lies. The difference is, mine survived the fire." He stepped into the car. The gates closed. Her father stood quietly beside her, whispering, "He warned you, child. He told you never to spit on a man when he's down." Vanessa's sobs echoed down the empty street, and behind those iron gates, Michael Cole's silence became the loudest victory Dallas had ever seen. The ballroom of the Grand Marquette Hotel shimmered with anticipation. Reporters, CEOs, and state officials filled the seats beneath the dazzling chandeliers. The occasion was the Dallas Business Integrity Awards, a night meant to honor resilience, innovation, and leadership. But everyone knew why the hall was packed. Michael Cole had been nominated for Entrepreneur of the Year. A year ago, his name was synonymous with scandal. Now it was etched into every major skyline project in Texas. Gideon Group had grown into a billion-dollar conglomerate, employing thousands, including the man who once opened his gates. Vanessa watched the event from the back row, disguised beneath a scarf and sunglasses. Her family's downfall had been complete. Her mother now volunteered at the same shelter Michael had funded, the Esther Hope Foundation. Her father still worked the gate, proud but weary. And Vanessa? She was a ghost in designer clothes, living off borrowed sympathy. When Michael's name was called, the room erupted in applause. He walked to the stage with calm grace, the same quiet strength he had shown through every storm. Cameras flashed like lightning. He took the microphone, paused, and smiled faintly. "Thank you," he began, his voice steady. "They say failure introduces a man to himself, but I disagree. Betrayal does that far better." The crowd fell silent. "A year ago," he continued, "I lost everything. My company, my marriage, my reputation. I was mocked, humiliated, spat on by people who once called me family. But that night taught me something important. Falling isn't the opposite of flying. It's the rehearsal." He turned slightly, his gaze sweeping the crowd, lingering just for a second on Vanessa's hidden face. "When you fall quietly, you hear things others don't. You learn who's real, who's loyal, and who only loves the light you give them. I found strength in that silence, and from that silence I rebuilt everything they tried to bury." Applause rippled through the hall. Cameras zoomed in on his composed smile. Michael raised his glass of champagne. "So tonight I dedicate this award, not to victory, but to resilience. To every man and woman who's ever been underestimated, ridiculed, or left behind. Remember this, revenge doesn't always come in anger. Sometimes it arrives dressed as success." The room stood in ovation. Vanessa's hands trembled as she watched, tears tracing silent paths down her cheeks. Every word was a mirror, one she couldn't look away from. As the applause roared, Michael stepped down from the stage. His assistant handed him his phone. A message from the shelter director blinked across the screen. "The new wing in Mrs. Esther's name is complete, sir. The women call it the House of Second Chances." Michael smiled softly. "Good. Make sure Vanessa gets the invitation to the opening ceremony." His assistant frowned. "You want her to come?" "Yes," he said quietly. "So she remembers that forgiveness is a privilege, not a right." Outside, as his car pulled away from the hotel, the city lights reflected against the windows. Bright, endless, untouchable. Vanessa watched from the curb, clutching the program with his name printed in gold. He had lost everything. He had been spat on. But he didn't break. He rebuilt. And now his silence had the final word.